All right, welcome to The Explainer. When we think about the U.S. Constitution, we usually focus on the federal government. But what about the states? What stops them from just acting like 50 little countries? Well, today we're opening up the official playbook that makes them all work as a team and makes sure the united in United States isn't just a suggestion.
And that's a really good question, right? I mean, how do you get 50 different states, each with their own unique laws and governments, to act like one single nation? Turns out, the founders thought about this a lot, and they baked a plan right into a short but super powerful section of the Constitution, Article 4. So here's how we're going to tackle this. We're breaking it down into four main parts. First, we'll look at the basic good neighbor rules. Then we'll get into the rules of justice, how we add new states, and we'll wrap up with the huge promise the federal government makes to every single state.
All right, first up, let's get into the foundational rules of engagement. How does a state like, say, California, have to treat the laws and the people from Florida? And the other way around, too.
Okay, this is the very first line of Article 4, and yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful. But this idea, full faith and credit, it's basically the foundation for how the states get along. What it's really saying is that every state has to take the official business of every other state seriously.
Okay, so that might sound kind of abstract, but it affects your life in super practical ways. This is why your driver's license from Texas works in Maine. It's why a marriage license from one state is valid in another, and why a court order can be enforced across state lines. Seriously, without this rule, every time you crossed a state border, it'd be like going through customs.
So the playbook continues with another really important rule for being a good neighbor. This whole privileges and immunities thing, it's all about making sure you don't suddenly become a second-class citizen just because you drove from Nevada into Arizona.
So here's the bottom line. If you're from Oregon and you're visiting Montana, Montana can't just decide you don't get the same basic rights as its own residents, like buying property, using the courts, or just traveling around. It's a promise of fair treatment for all of us, no matter where we are in the country.
Okay, so we've got the good neighbor rules down. But what happens when things get more serious, like with crime and justice? What happens if someone commits a crime in one state and then makes a run for it to another? Article 4 lays out two really clear rules for this. The one on the left is what we call extradition. It's simple. You can't hide out in another state to escape a crime. Now, the one on the right, this is the fugitive slave clause. It's obviously no longer in effect, and it's a really dark part of our history. But looking at them together, you can see how the original Constitution treated these situations in a very parallel and frankly chilling way. All right, so obviously the country didn't stop at 13 states. The founders totally knew it was going to grow, so they put rules for adding new players to the team right into the playbook. So how exactly do you add a new star to that flag?
And this is just a brilliant example of that whole balance of power thing, right? Congress gets to say yes to new states. But, and this is a huge but, it can't just mess with the states that are already there. It's all about protecting the states that are already part of the club. You can't just, decide to slice off a piece of West Texas and call it a new state, unless Texas agrees.
The playbook also hands Congress another huge chunk of power. It gives them total control over all the U.S. territory and property that isn't an official state. And think about what that means. We're talking national parks, military bases, territories like Puerto Rico and Guam, all of it. Basically, if it's U.S. property but not a state, Congress is the boss.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about what the states have to do for each other. But what about the other way around? What does the federal government promise the states? This last section of Article 4, you can think of it like a massive security guarantee. This is pretty much the ultimate insurance policy for every state. First, the feds promise every state will have a representative government, so no dictatorships allowed. Second, it promises to protect them from any foreign invasion. And third, if a state asks for help, the national government has to step in to stop major unrest or rebellion, what the founders called domestic violence. So, if you boil it all down, that's the job of Article 4. It's the part that makes sure states respect each other's laws, that they work together on justice, that we have a process for growing the country, and that every state is protected. It's the constitutional glue that really makes a pluribus unum, out of many one, actually work in the real world. And that right there is the big question that keeps this document so relevant. Think about it. When you've got states with totally different laws on major issues like marriage or voting rights, how does that full faith and credit thing even work today? The rules in this playbook, written way back in 1787, are being pushed and pulled and re-examined all the time. And it really makes you think, are we still playing by the same rules?